Atlanta, LA, San Francisco, Columbus, Dallas, and Boston each have hospital projects going on in the $2 to $4 billion range. So it really is all over the place and in all industries. And so it's an exciting time.
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, podcast producer and market analyst at Leader's Edge. Construction continues to be a large topic in America. From building more efficient airports, to improved hospitals, to larger sports complexes, there are so many sectors that are demanding bigger and better facilities. In this episode, I sit down with Jon Tellekamp, Chief Underwriting Officer of Construction at AXA XL in the Americas. We discuss how insurers are responding to the needs and risks that come with large-scale modern-day construction projects, and how they've dealt with past disruptions, from COVID-19 to supply chain delays. First, I start our conversation by asking Jon about construction trends he has his eye on.
Yeah, in some ways, I think what's not being built is almost easier to answer. But, where we're seeing huge investment is, the one area that everyone's talking about, data centers. That certainly is topic du jour in many ways. But I do think, stepping away from that, there are a ton of huge projects going on that would have tested the bounds of project size in the last few years. So thinking about it, we have infrastructure work, industrial energy work. There's a huge push for manufacturing in the country. And then I think, to me, a bit of a fun one. I'm a sports fan, but 25% of the NFL teams either just built or in this past year or are building or planning to build, with opening up in early 2030, 2031, et cetera. So that's 8 stadiums being built in the NFL. Las Vegas recently built their football stadium. They're building their baseball stadium. You're also seeing MLS, the soccer, is building stadiums. New York City has one going up. NCAA seeing growth in their stadiums. So really a lot going on there. And then also in the hospital space. So, I think from a quick review, Atlanta, LA, San Francisco, Columbus, Dallas, and Boston each have hospital projects going on in the $2 to $4 billion range. So it really is all over the place and in all industries. And so it's an exciting time.
Next, Jon shares the cost trends impacting construction and how they factor into risk and underwriting.
Cost is certainly elevated. The labor pool is under pressure. If all of these big projects all require subcontractors to be working on them at a time when you also have an aging workforce there. So labor is stressed to some degree. I think we're still in a good spot, but it certainly is something we keep an eye on. And from a cost perspective, that it's certainly a topic of conversation every day, since COVID, really, between COVID and then, continued inflationary pressures there, costs are going up. So, as we think about that from a risk perspective, policy limits alone, or what's necessary to ensure the building of these facilities properly. How do we go about structuring deals and building towers and really all of the risks? And then going into the operational, it's certainly not my area of expertise, but once these are operational and put to intended use, you're going to have more stress on total limits that are necessary to continue to ensure these for the future. You also see, as the projects get bigger, the structure of how the stakeholders are aligned get more complex. So you have multi-party JVs, multi-tier subs, and so forth. That means a lot of moving parts, a lot of different contracts being executed, and also the focus on accomplishing it on time and on budget. So, for us, how we go about looking at it is really relationship with those contractors is vital for us. So, we're very focused on the big ones, the ENR 400 for sure, and we really see more success with the larger ones, even within that subset. So we build relationships. We maintain open lines of communication. We look for track record. Where have they performed? How have they performed? And how can we partner with them? And so that all really plays into getting ourselves more comfortable with some of these bigger exposures based on the relationship.
Jon then dives into some of the most challenging types of builds he sees.
Yeah, I would say right now the most challenging in the industry are those heavy civil infrastructure jobs. And by that, just to be clear, mean road jobs, bridge jobs. I'd include airports in there. And the one common theme amongst all those is that you generally still have the general public is involved and still around the site as you're doing the work. So, I don't know if you've flown in or out of LaGuardia recently. They've certainly done a recent upgrade, and that work was all going on and is going on with the airport being open. If you look at JFK and DFW, they're both also in the middle of or starting major projects to upgrade their facilities. I mean, those are, if I see it right, JFK is looking at about $19 billion, and DFW in the $12 billion range. But that's 2 of 5 projects that are $5 billion or more just in the airport space. In New York, you have the Hudson Tunnel that's just kicking off. That's estimated to be about $16 billion. And so these are all in highly densely populated areas from a traffic perspective or with airplanes. That leads to a lot of complexity of how do you execute that in a safe manner while still getting the job done to ensure that it's going to open on time and do what you expect it to do, provide the ability to connect to places.
Then, Jon talks about casualty risk in construction.
No secret that there's an aging workforce, and folks are at times struggling. I think we're okay right now, but there's definitely a gap in what will be the impending retirement dates, and then the trades folks that are coming up in the next wave of that. It is concerning, from a quality perspective, from an injury perspective. Onboarding new employees generally does lead to higher incident rates from either a workers' comp or a quality perspective that needs to be taken into account when we think about how we go about doing it. So, it's definitely it's a challenge overall. If you kind of expand it out, subcontractors, as we build these mega projects, are certainly going to be in demand. How do you go about properly vetting them when you have work to do, and how do you make sure that the quality of the work is up to the standards that, as the general contractor or the insurer, you expect to be done? Another area that has been talked about lately, and I think is a really important topic, is the mental health of contractors that are of construction workers. They're multiple times more likely to commit suicide, and there's a variety of reasons I think that are generally considered. It's a high intensity type job. It's physically demanding, long hours, tight schedules, a lot of pressure physically and mentally, and it also experiences higher substance abuse issues because of this, whether it's because of lack of sleep or sore bodies or getting hurt on the job. So that's something that we do need to embrace head on to ensure that not only are we encouraging people to go into these critical jobs, but also ensuring their safety holistically, and not just while they're on the site, they're safe.
We then discuss how SDI, also known as subcontractor default insurance coverage, has changed in the past couple of years.
The policy has been relatively consistent, but I think how we've gone about executing it is in the actual, either when a claim occurs or when a claim is about to occur. I think the communication has really gotten better between the carrier, the general contractor, the brokers vital. Our risk engineers are on site with the general contractor during this time to implement a program to ensure mitigation of any potential losses. So, it's really evolved into a product that is becoming a huge tool for our contractors to utilize to build private. It's not really utilized in the public sector right now for public builds, but that's, most of what we talked about are private builds from stadiums and hospitals and so forth. So it's becoming a standard tool that the larger GCs are using on these projects to come in on budget. I think the industry's gotten better about tracking the data, utilizing the data, pre-qualifying subcontractors to ensure proper financial wherewithal to complete these larger, more complex projects. And I think that's only going to have to get that much better as we think forward to these major projects. So, some packages are getting larger. Subcontractors are going to be relied on more. How they go about executing that is really important. Some of the positives that we're seeing out of it, though, is subcontractor balance sheets. We're definitely seeing improvement on because they're getting paid more readily, and these projects are so large and they're happening so quickly that the general contractor, the owner, is setting up pay schedules that are at a slightly more expedited rate at times. So the subcontractor has more flow from a cash flow perspective that allows them to operate their business successfully. So it has its challenges, but it also has seen areas that we're pretty excited about from an improvement and from a financial security perspective of some of these subcontractors.
Now, reaching its 15th year milestone, AXA XL and the Americas construction team has seen a lot in a decade and a half, from the coronavirus pandemic to sporadic supply chain disruptions. Jon takes us through changes and trends he's noted in construction coverage.
A big one that I see is the continued focus on consultative type work with your brokers and contractors. The relationship is key, and it really is important, from everything from just providing a transaction, an individual transaction, to creating a long-term risk engineering plan. So, focusing on true long-term opportunity for improvement that's implemented over the course of not just, one site visit or one check the box type visit, but putting in place a plan for improvement over the course of multiple years to really allow that contractor to continue to perform best in class, because the world is changing so quickly. So that's been fascinating. The use of technology is certainly a huge difference. Cameras in cars, really was not even, I would say, not talked about, maybe minimally discussed 15 years ago, where now it's really a standard, an expectation for a complex client to protect themselves. We've seen that work out well from a claim scenario at times. COVID and supply chain disruptions have certainly taught all of us that we can work in a complex, tough environment and still deliver. I think the general contractors have done a nice job of getting ahead of any supply chain issues that they might see around the corner. So whether it's, purchasing more, goods for and necessary items for a long-term project a little bit more upfront and expediting that just in case, but also locks in the pricing that way. And then, negotiating contracts that allow for fluctuation based on pricing of materials has been a great takeaway. And then we've, worked through different periods of hardening and softening markets in that time period. We're fortunate. I think we built ourselves to be a long-term sustainable player here. So, reacting to markets is important from a balance sheet perspective, but not overreacting, and ensuring that you are taking a long-term view of how you partner, how you influence within the industry, and how you fulfill your commitment of being there for your clients long term.
Seems like there's a lot of resilience.
We've been challenged, and I think as an industry, if you think of, 15 years ago, we were coming out of a really bad hurricane season, right? At the, was it 2008 or so? I know that's more than 15, but I'm rounding numbers here. But, so dealing with the after effects of hurricane seasons that were greater than expected, think about the legal system abuse that we continue to see, heavily impacting the casualty portfolios in the industry. And we've still been able to stand by our clients and provide them with the necessary resources, the claims expertise, and the insurance policies for them to do their business and be successful at it.
With the past in context, Jon then shares what he foresees impacting the future of construction policy and risk.
The tech and digitalization is certainly a huge part of what we are anticipating. We had our client council earlier this year, and that was a huge topic of conversation, either on stage or off stage, as you think about how do we evolve, how do we adopt new procedures and processes that, I don't think insurance and construction are generally the first in line to, we're not exactly fast movers at times. We like to see how things play out. We like to understand how the past is going to predict the future. And, I think there's an understanding that this needs to be a little bit more rapid, and adoption is going to be vital from a, wider adoption of, BIM and, the AI driven planning. How do we go about that? Prefab. You're seeing a lot of offsite work being done and then brought in, at a near finished product to then get installed on site. So, that's really fascinating. Cyber is going to play a huge role in this, as we think about all of the interconnected devices and, how much we rely on technology today. It certainly is, seems that we're going to be relying on it even more in the future. So that's going to be a huge part of it. And then I think how we focus, the climate is certainly, as we were talking before we started, it's quite warm right now in the East Coast. And, how do we build more resilience into the building? How do we support, the decarbonization, resilience, and, the evolving building needs around codes too? That's certainly going to be an important aspect, and the construction and insurance industry are going to be vital to succeeding at a even global scale of making that come true. And then, market dynamics, there's a lot of aggregation with some of these big projects, whether it's on the property side, SDI utilizing a lot of the same subcontractors, a lot of you have large general contractors on multiple sites. So there's a lot of exposure out there. And I would say, last, but certainly not least, since it only runs on this, but continued investment in labor. How do we encourage, and how do we, as a, whether it's a country or even the contractors and insurers and brokers, get more people interested and excited about a career as a trade contractor, because they're very rewarding. They can be financially lucrative for sure. And I think we've been so focused in the last, call it 50 years on getting a college education as the way to get ahead, that we've really underemphasized the need for those skills that allow us to build successfully. So I'm hopeful that, and encouraged at some of the investment that we've seen from, whether it's contractors or other supporting organizations, and really creating a little bit more buzz around the trade contractor world.
That was my conversation with Jon Tellekamp, Chief Underwriting Officer of Construction at AXA XL in the Americas. I hope you enjoyed it. For more podcasts, please subscribe or go to leadersedge.com.